I feel so bad that you had to stop going to school. I feel so bad that I cannot afford to pay your school fees, or change your uniforms, or buy you a new shoe. The one thing my daughter wants badly, I cannot give it to her. Don't cry, Mama. We will not be poor forever. I will become very rich one day, and you won't have to work on the farm anymore. Ndidi looked at her daughter through her tears and smiled. How are you so confident that you will become rich one day? Asked her mother. In a small village called Oka, there lived a girl named Egondu. She was a very brilliant girl who loved to read. At 9 years old, Egondu had very big dreams. She would always say to her mother, Mama, don't worry. When I grow up and become very rich, I will take you to the city. You will fly in an airplane and I will build you a very big house. But her mother would laugh at her and say, Egondu, you have big eyes for your age. Don't you know that only people who have money can afford to fly in an airplane and live in big houses? Sometimes her mother would scold her and ask her to concentrate on her chores. But the little girl had a spirit that could not be quenched. Egondu loved going to school to learn. Her mother was very poor and struggled badly with sending her to school. Oka was a very small village. They only had one primary and secondary school. Their primary school was so small that it only had one block of building, which contained primary 1 to 6, the headmaster's office, and a tiny toilet which everyone shared. Every day, Egondu would go to school in her torn and badly patched uniforms. Her school bag was worn out. Even the soles of her shoes were filed out. At school, the other children would laugh and make jest of her, either for her uniform, her school bag, or her shoe. Her writing materials were never complete. She was always owing one fee or the other, and was always the last to pay her school fees. On so many occasions, the headmaster and class teacher had sent her away from either class or school for not paying a particular fee. Her mother had called her one of the days she was sent home and told her that she would have to stop schooling because she was tired of the embarrassments. Egondu had cried all through that night and refused to eat her food. Her mother had tried to comfort her but could not. She knew that going to school and reading made her daughter very happy. It broke her heart that she could not give her the one thing she wanted. Ndidi was a single parent. Her boyfriend at the time, who had promised to marry her, had abandoned her when he found out she was pregnant. Her aunt, who was her next of kin and guardian after her parents died, had sent her away, saying she could not afford to feed two mouths at the same time. Ndidi had survived all those years, doing menial jobs and working on people's farms. One day, as Egondu was about to leave for school, her mother gave her a few coins and told her to buy akara along her way, as there was no food in the house for her that morning. Egondu was very grateful. She took the money, hugged her mother, and left for school. That day, during break time at school, Egondu sat down at a corner and watched the other children play as she ate her akara. Not long after, her food finished. She looked down at the paper which was used to wrap the akara and wished Mama had given her more money to buy enough. As she was about to squeeze the paper, an article on the paper caught her attention. It was a write-up about positive thoughts and confessions. She spread the paper wide open and began to read. That piece of knowledge changed little Egondu's life forever. From that day on, she learned to speak positively about herself. Even at school, when other children made fun of her for wearing torn clothes or called her poor for not paying her fees, She would always have a positive reply for them. The third term was coming to an end. Promotion exams were around the corner. That day at the assembly, debtors were to be called out. But unfortunately, only Egondu was standing in front of the headmaster. The other children giggled as the headmaster spoke. He said the school could no longer tolerate her parents' inabilities and constant debt. He sent her home and told her not to return until she paid her fees. Tears ran down her cheeks as the other children giggled. Her teacher, Mrs. Nwanneka, escorted her to the school gate. She tried to console Egondu. She told her not to worry, that everything would be fine. Egondu did not want to go home that day. She didn't want to be like all those other children who stayed at home and played all day while the others were in school learning. So, she went by her class window outside the gate and sat down. When the pupils came in from the assembly and the teachers began to teach, she brought out her book too and listened and wrote as much as she could. Every day, Egondi would go to school. She would sit outside on the low fence by her class and listen to every lesson as it was taught. She would leave and go home before the closing bell rang. She did not want to risk the headmaster, teacher, or other children seeing her. Egondu continued to go to school every day. She never told her mother she was sent out. She knew that if she did, her mother would not allow her go near the school. Instead, she would insist that she joined her on the farm. Unfortunately for Egondu, her teacher, Mrs. Nwanneka, came by the house one day. She wanted to inquire if Ndidi would pay her daughter's school fees quick enough for her to return to school to write her promotion exams to primary 5. Ndidi had scolded her badly for hiding the truth from her. What if something had happened to you while you were sitting outside the school all day? What would I have done? Mama, I'm sorry, cried Egondu. I was afraid to tell you. I didn't want you to stop me from going to school every day. Well, said her mother, no more school, Egondu. I can't afford it. And no more sitting outside the fence, risking your life. You will join me on the farm so that we could work to increase our pay. Maybe then we can save enough for you to go back to school. Egonde tried to plead with her mom, but her mother was very angry and sent her off to bed. That night, she cried herself to sleep. Throughout the holidays, Egondu was not happy. Ndidi tried to cheer her up, but to no avail. From time to time, she would beg her mother to allow her resume school with the other children. Ndidi refused, said she didn't want the villagers to abuse her for carelessly allowing her daughter to sit outside the school compound. Not too long afterwards, school resumed and the children started to attend school again. Every morning, Egondu would sit outside and watch as the other kids left for school. Sometimes she would cry. Other times, she would refuse to speak to her mother. Ndidi noticed how sad her daughter was and didn't know what to do. She couldn't borrow money from anyone because she would not be able to pay back. She was managing her life with her daughter with the little she was making and didn't want to be indebted to anyone. One day, she called her daughter and said, "What do you think the headmaster would do if he caught you outside the school learning?" "He will not catch me, Mama. The gate man always lets me know whenever someone is coming." "I feel so bad that you had to stop going to school. I feel so bad that I cannot afford to pay your school fees or change your uniforms or buy you a new shoe. The one thing my daughter wants badly, I cannot give it to her," her mother said, crying. "Don't cry, Mama. We will not be poor forever. I will become very rich one day, and you won't have to work on the farm anymore." Ndidi looked at her daughter through her tears and smiled. "How are you so confident that you will become rich one day?" asked her mother. "Mama, I learned that there is power in the words we say, that we can change our situation with our words. I want to better our lives when I grow up. Besides, it makes me feel better when I say these things. Eh? Said Ndidi. Please, Mama, allow me to go to school. Let me finish learning with my mates in primary 5. After that, I won't go again, I promise. Ndidi looked at her daughter. The mention of school always lifted her spirit. She thought about it for a while, then accepted. Only for primary 5, and you won't get us in trouble. I promise, Mama, Egondu said as she hugged her mother. Another school year began. Egondu would wait until the children left for school. Then she would leave. But she no longer went in her uniform. Her mother said it would be best so that she wouldn't be noticed easily. Every day, she would sit outside the school on the fence, beside her class, and listen until the lessons were over. One day, as she was listening to the social studies lesson and taking notes, she heard someone call her name. She lifted her head, only to see Mama Emeka standing across from her. Egondu, I learnt you were chased out from school. What are you doing on the fence? She moved closer until she was standing very close to Egondu. What are you doing here? Does your mother know you are here? Yes, ma, replied Egondu. Mama allowed me to come. So, this is what you and your mother are doing, eh? You are learning for free, Abi? So, those of us paying school fees are fools, eh? No problem. The villagers will hear of this. Mama Emeka said and walked away as she muttered to herself. Mama Emeka was a very troublesome woman, always looking for problems where there were none. She was the first person to always start up a gossip in the village. Villagers who were sensible tried to avoid her. Egondo packed her books. She did not want her mother to get into trouble, so she decided to leave. For the next 2 days, Egondu did not go to school and was very sad. When her mother asked what the problem was, she told her what happened with Mamemeka. Ndidi was upset. Is that why you stopped going to school? Yes, Mama. Ndidi smiled and said to her daughter, Mamemeka is a troublesome gossip. Everyone in the village knows that, and no one takes her seriously anymore. Do you want to keep going to learn every day, or you want to stop? Ndidi asked her daughter. I want to learn. Good, said Ndidi. Don't let people like Mama Emeka stop you. We meet such people every day in this world, and you can't let such people get to you. Thank you, Mama, Egondu said as she hugged her mother. Egondu started going to school again, until one day, few minutes after break was over, the school gate opened unexpectedly. Egondu picked up her school bag and started to walk away, thinking it was the headmaster or a teacher who was coming out of school. But Mr. Nduka and his daughter Adeze walked out of the compound. He seemed very upset and was scolding his daughter over the complaints he had received from the headmaster. He was complaining about his daughter's constant failures. Adeze had been asked to repeat primary 5, and her father wasn't happy about it. He said she wasn't serious with school and he wasn't going to waste his money anymore. Meanwhile, Egondu was walking behind them, listening to everything he was saying. All of a sudden, without thinking, Egondi said, I will teach her. What? Mr. Nduka said as he stopped and turned around. He was aware someone was walking behind them, but he hadn't paid attention to know who it was. He was too upset to care. What did you just say? Asked Mazinduka. I will teach her, replied Egondu. Who are you? Asked Mazinduka. My name is Egondu. Ndidi is my mother. She knew Mazinduka because her mother sometimes works on his farm. Mazinduka was one of the rich men in Oka who owned a car. You will teach her. Are you not supposed to be in school yourself? He asked, feeling irritated. I am, but my mother cannot afford to pay my fees. What class are you in? Asked Mazindoka, curious about the little girl who was offering to teach his daughter. I'm supposed to be in primary 5, she replied. Mazindoka looked at her for a while, shook his head in disbelief, and walked away towards his car. He reached out to start his car, then stopped and thought for a while. What is there to lose? His daughter was already failing anyway, even with the lesson teacher she had. He got out of his car and went to meet Egondu where she was standing. Okay, I will let you teach Adaeze. What should I give you in return? Mazindoka asked. Nothing, Mazi. The only thing I want is to share her textbooks, since my mother cannot afford to buy them for me. Mazindoka was surprised at the little girl's request. He accepted, but said he would speak with Ndidi first, before they began. Egondu was happy. When she got home, she told her mother everything that happened. Mazindoka came to see Ndidi, and they both agreed. So, Egondu stopped going to school to learn over the fence. Every afternoon, she would go to Mazindoka's house to teach Adaeze. From there, she was able to acquaint herself with what was taught for the day, read the textbooks, and help Adaeze with homework. Adaeze started to do well in class. She came home with good grades, and her reading improved. Mr. Nduka was impressed. His daughter passed her promotion exams and moved to primary 6. Mazindoka was overwhelmed with joy. He did not know how to repay the little girl who had been putting his daughter through her academics. One day during the long holidays, Mazindoka and his wife visited Ndidi and her daughter. For all Egondu had done for their daughter, they offered to send her back to school, to pay for her education up to any level she wanted. Egondu was overjoyed. Ndidi was speechless. She went on her knees and thanked Mazindoka and his wife. And so, Egondu went back to school in new uniforms, school bag, shoes, books, and no longer worried about whether she would be chased out of class. The headmaster promoted her to primary 6 after passing the entry exams based on primary 5 scheme. Adaeze and Egondu continued to study every day. They passed their common entrance. Mazindoka sent both of them off to boarding school in the city. He wanted the best for Adaeze, who was his only child, and wanted good also for the little girl who wiped shame away from his face. The village gossips carried on. Some said Ndidi had sold her daughter to Nduka. Others said Nduka had adopted Egondu. Ndidi ignored the gossips and went about her business. Her joy was full and her heart was at peace. Her daughter was so deserving of every blessing she had received. She continued to work in Nduka's farm. She even started a petty trade. On visiting days, she would prepare delicious meals and travel to the city with Mazindoka to visit her daughter. During the holidays, when Egondu returned, she would help her mother on the farm, and on the days when they were not on the farm, she would follow her to the market. Adaeze and Egondu became very good friends. They both did well in their studies and went on to the university. Adaeze went on to study medicine, while Egondu studied petrochemical engineering. Years later, Egondu graduated and got a very good job with one of the leading oil companies in Lagos. And so, the little 9-year-old girl, who learnt of the power of the tongue, was able to talk her way into greatness. She built a big house in Lagos and took her mom away from the poverty she had known all her life. Adaeze did well too. She graduated with excellent grades and went on to further her studies abroad. Lessons to learn from this story. Who says a thing and it comes to pass when the Lord God has not commanded it? Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who love it shall eat its fruits. Determination is crucial to success. If you want to succeed, you have to be determined to work hard.